Hello and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about a book with some ace representation in it. This book is called Before We Were Blue. It was written by E.J. Schwartz and it's coming out on the 14th of September. I'm going to split this video into two parts, first talking about my general impressions and give a brief synopsis of the book, for my understanding of the book. And I'm going to do this first, so if you want to read the book yourself, you don't get spoiled on anything. And the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the book in more detail, so once people have read the book, they can come and see a more in-depth review and my in-depth thoughts about it. One thing to note is that I was sent a free advance copy of this book, although I wasn't compensated in any way for it. So I just wanted to let you know in case that would affect your opinion of what I'm saying. So, without further ado, let's get started. But before we get into the video proper, I would like to give a content warning for the contents of this video and the book. Because in this book there are discussions of sexual abuse and rape, self-harm and suicide, and eating disorders. So if any of those things are triggering to you, I would not recommend this book or watching the rest of this video. With that out of the way, Before We Were Blue is a story about two young teenage girls, Shoshana and Rowan, who are in a eating disorder treatment clinic. The story is really centered around their friendship and their relationship with both each other and themselves, because I think this is a very introspective book in the sense that you're exploring the characters' feelings and emotions and their problems and their mental health issues, and specifically because it's set in an eating disorder clinic and both of the main characters have eating disorders, that's a really big theme of the book. There is ace representation in the book and it's one of the main characters, but it's not a principal part of the story. I feel like if you took the ace part of the story out of it, it wouldn't affect it all that much. And that's not saying that that's a bad thing. I think it's very important to have stories where there are ace characters but asexuality isn't the focus. However, if you're looking for a book that discusses an ace experience more in depth, then this may not be the thing for you. That being said, I did enjoy the book as a whole. It's not the sort of thing that I usually read, but I could appreciate the quality of writing and the story that it told and how important that story is to share. All of us have some sort of mental health issues to some extent, and by sharing your experience of that, you can help other people come to terms with certain parts of themselves. I think eating disorders and body image issues is something that is really prevalent, especially among young people, because of how society pressures people to look a certain way or to be a certain way. It can really mess with your image of yourself. And I don't have an eating disorder myself, so I can't speak to that part of it. But I do have quite a few body image issues, and I could see myself and my own internal thinking in some of what the characters were saying and thinking themselves. The friendship that the two characters share is very believable, it's very real, and I think that definitely motivates the story to a large extent. So overall, I'm going to say that I enjoyed this book for what it was. Like I said earlier, it's not the sort of thing I usually read, but I appreciated the story that it told. If any of the things I mentioned earlier would trigger you, then don't read this book. If you're looking for a book that has a very heavy emphasis on ace representation, this may not be the book for you either. But it does discuss some very deep, serious topics, so that could be something that you may be interested in reading about. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go a bit into more in-depth about the story, so if you want to read it yourself, this may be a good point to jump off. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was Shoshana and Rowan's friendship. So by the time this book starts, they are already good friends, but through reading it, I don't think that was a very healthy friendship. And that's not saying that it's a bad thing on the part of the author or the part of the book. I think that's a very realistic friendship to portray, especially for young people. You can tell that Shoshana looks up to Rowan. Rowan is very controlling, and at the same time, Shoshana is very willing to be controlled. She wants to please Rowan and only show the sides of her which she thinks will be accepted. That's something I can definitely relate to, because when I was younger, I would shape the way that I interacted with people in order to make them happy. The friendship is also very codependent, which becomes a problem later on in the book, because they're both at this eating disorder clinic, but one of them, Shoshana, gets out of the clinic first, and this creates quite a bit of conflict between them. Even though they're not together in the same place, they wanted to always be together, and it almost feels like a betrayal on Shoshana's part that she leaves the clinic first. And there is this very unbalanced dynamic between them throughout the book. Rowan, you can tell, is not getting better as fast as Shoshana is. So from the start of the book to a good portion of the way through, you can tell that Shoshana is progressing through the treatment a lot faster than Rowan is, despite Rowan having been there longer. Then this creates a very tense dynamic in their friendship. The next thing I wanted to talk about was asexuality in particular, and its representation. So, like I said earlier, it isn't a key part of the story. Shoshana is asexual, and she finds out during the course of the story that she is ace. But it's never really that hard on her. And I know that it doesn't necessarily have to be, but I thought it wasn't that believable that everyone around her kind of automatically accepted it and knew what that was, because that's not going to be the case the majority of the time. It can be, and it's not too big of a problem, but if I were looking for an ace story, I would want some of that portrayed as well, which is why I wasn't quite satisfied of this book as a form of like really great ace representation. It's not bad, there's nothing negative about the ace representation in it, but if I were looking for something specifically for ace representation, I don't think I would have been satisfied with this book in particular. A lot of the discussion of asexuality is within Shoshana's internal dialogue, and there's only one scene, I think, where it's discussed openly between Shoshana and Rowan, and it's kind of just, oh yeah, you're asexual, great, that's fine, I don't mind, we can still be friends. Because at that point Rowan has a crush or some sort of infatuation towards Shoshana. I guess instead of being annoyed or angry or confused, Rowan is just like, yeah, that's fine, you're ace, you don't want that from me. Which is fine, but I feel like it didn't add up to me with Rowan's character. She didn't seem like the sort of person to me who would just be like, okay, that's fine, I don't mind. She seemed like she may have reacted badly because she tended to have more of a temper about her, but maybe that was me misinterpreting her character. And the final thing I wanted to talk about was the portrayal of eating disorders, and particularly the use of a first-person writing style in order to get the reader to understand what these girls are going through. So what I meant by that is that there is one specific point in the book that I wanted to point out because it was very powerful to me. So throughout the book, when the girls would see themselves in a reflection, they would describe themselves as very like chubby and round and using all these words which would indicate being overweight. And once Shoshana gets out of the eating disorder clinic, I believe, she rejoins her gymnastics team, which is what caused the eating disorder in the first place. And there is a single line where, I can't remember the exact wording, but it says something like, I don't even have ab lines anymore. And in my mind, because I visualize these things, Shoshana was quite chubby, because that's the way she'd been describing herself. But that's the way she was describing herself. That's not the objective way she was. And that's a very key distinction to be made. For people with body image issues, especially those with body dysmorphia, they may not have an objective view of their own appearance. So when the only thing you have to go off is the narration, and the narrator has a distorted view of themselves, then the only image you have as a reader is a distorted view of that character. It really allows the reader to be put into the shoes of someone who feels that way, of someone who can't see themselves objectively. Even though that character may be an ideal weight or bordering on underweight even, they may see themselves as overweight. And I don't think a lot of people necessarily realize that, because you only tend to take into account your own view, your own perception of things. I found that really powerful, and the first person perspective that had been used to tell the story really emphasized the storytelling in that sense. Even though I will admit that I prefer third person, but in this case it helps the storytelling, so I will forgive it. But yes, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the book. To give a summary, I was just talking about Before We Were Blue, written by E.J. Schwartz. This book releases on September 14th if you are interested in purchasing it. I would definitely recommend this book on the caveat that you're not looking for an explicit, really strong central ace representation. The representation that is there is good, but it is not the central driving force of the plot. And I will reiterate that you shouldn't read this book if you think you will be triggered by self-harm, suicide, rape, sexual abuse, or eating disorders. Basically a lot of triggers in this book. So if that's something you're unsure about, I would probably steer clear of it. But overall, a good read, and I would recommend it to anyone who thinks they may be interested in reading something like that. So that's it for the book review part of this video. You may have noticed that I skimmed over the fact that this is my first video in 2 months. That's because I'm not really ready at this point to go back to making my usual weekly videos. I just need some more time to get things sorted, because I didn't really have the time and space I needed to sort out the channel and get it into the place I wanted it to be in the time I had off, just because I had so much else going on. But one idea I did have, if people would enjoy watching that, is just to start doing weekly videos again, but more just a short vlogs about my progress of getting the channel up and running again, and my thought process on it, and what I'm planning going forward. So if that's something you would be interested in, then just mention it down in the comments below, because it will be very different from what I usually do. But I'm rejuvenated. If you didn't notice, I'm in a new place. That was a big reason for the busyness. And hopefully soon I'll be ready to start making videos again. But yeah, otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. I post videos every Saturday, so if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. That's a lie, but anyway, that is all I had to say today. Have a wonderful day, and I shall see you next time.